Hey, what's up guys? This is Chet Donoth from Donoth Outdoors, and today is a beautiful day if you like the snow. So if you're a new watcher, I urge you to go down to that subscribe button and go ahead and click. And one of the ways I love to hunt deer is to track them in the snow. Okay? I've done about 50-50 bow and gun, and I have never shot one with a bow with this method. I think it would be pretty challenging. If you have, comment below. I'd love to hear the story about that, because that is quite an achievement. Anyway, I have been successful with rifle hunting, but it is a fun method to do, and it is a very effective method. The first time I tried this, I was in high school, right? And so for some reason, I didn't think this was gonna work. And if you think about it, that's kind of dumb, because think about it. I mean, you got footprints. Something had to make them, right? And it's pretty easy to tell what a deer's footprint looks like in the snow. It's pretty recognizable, and the way I like to do it is I like to go on a day like today where it's actually still snowing. You go out, you find some fresh tracks, and that's the toughest part. Once you do that, you're in the game. You find some big tracks if you want a nice buck, but oftentimes that could be a big doe as well. So it's really hard to figure out, you know, what kind of actual deer you're stalking. And sometimes it's just kind of a gamble, and that's part of the fun. It's like a surprise. But you know, if you find some really big tracks and you think they're a buck, you know, don't get too excited. I know a lot of articles say if they're over this amount of size or whatever, or if they're shaped like this, they're a buck. Okay, it's really hard to tell that. There's a lot of different differentiations. There's a lot of huge does out there that can make just as big a tracks as you know, a buck. So don't get too caught up on that. But part of it is just kind of seeing what you come up with. And you know, and if you get to the point where you've stalked up close enough to make a shot, and he's not the buck you want, or he's a doe and you were wanting a buck, or vice versa, or whatever, then just don't shoot, right? And you've learned something, you've gained something from that. So the first time I ever did this, I was about 16 years old, and I was trying at bow hunting, right? And so when I went out, I thought, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to sneak up on this deer. And so I followed it for about 2.5 hours, and lo and behold, about 30 yards in front of me, I've caught up to this doe, and I caught up to her, and you know, I was just amazed. But really, it's kind of silly for me to be amazed, right? Because what did I think was going to happen? You know, eventually when it's snowing like this and you find fresh tracks, and they're, you know, gradually, if you find some that are covered up, you know, you can kind of gauge by how much the snow is falling by, you know, how old those tracks are. So these were super fresh tracks, and I started following them. I've been following them for 2 hours, and lo and behold, there's a doe, and I'm super surprised, which is kind of ridiculous, because of course there's a doe. That's who made the tracks, right? I caught up to her, and I was just hooked from that point on. It was so much fun. Hey girl, you're trying to be in the video. You're so pretty. You're so pretty. Get out of here, girl. All right, so this video is gonna be about a few methods that can help you get on a deer if you come into a day like this and you have a lot of area to cover. And that's the key. This isn't going to be something you're going to be able to do on your back 15 acres or whatever, or in a suburban area or something if you're like an archery hunter in a suburban area. This isn't really something that's going to be like. This is for very wide open spaces, large areas. You'll be very lucky if you can track a deer for any amount of time and they stay on 40 to 80 acre plot. They're going to cover, you know, probably have better luck at 300 or 400 acres or more, and the best ideal place is thousands of acres of public land, and you get walking and you just get way out there, and hopefully you don't run into a lot of other hunters using this method. So this can be a really great way to get a great public land buck or a public land deer, but keep in mind, you got to pack this thing out, okay? So be prepared for that. Have your pack on your back, know how to quarter the game, and pack it out, because you're going to have a long drag most likely if you don't shoot it towards a road, and there's really no way to know exactly when you're going to catch up to that deer. So the first tip, go out when it's already snowing or it just stopped snowing. That way, when you find tracks, you know they're fresh, and you can start following them knowing that that deer was not that far away, right? It hasn't been, you know, 2 or 3 days ago, which is going to be, you know, he could be anywhere. He could be, you know, in another, you know, way across another property, across rivers, and he's probably gone, okay? There's tons of other ways that expert trackers can tell you, but it is seriously hard to recognize. I mean, you can look for crystallization of the ice around there, fresh powder, you can kind of tell, you know, how old it is. So the next tip is kind of an obvious one, but it's not really an obvious one, because I know a lot of people who have gotten surprised by deer, myself included, okay? Pay attention to your surroundings. Don't get caught up on just looking down at the ground and seeing where that track goes, okay? Try to anticipate where that track goes. You know, look down the track, look and see if it's on a trail. Then you can kind of step off of that track and kind of follow it that way while you're scanning the wood line or the field edges or whatever you're doing, okay? And try to anticipate where that deer is gonna go. Don't just have your head to the ground focused on tracks, because I tell you, you will be surprised, and so will the deer, and the deer is gonna have a jump on you, right? So you wanna make sure that you're going along at a fast enough pace, that you're going faster than the deer, and that you're going to catch up to them, but yet slow enough to where you see the deer before you basically walk right up next to them, right? Which is probably not gonna happen, but you'll probably scare them or spook them before you get a good enough shot. And you really don't wanna take running shots. It's not a super ethical way to shoot, in my opinion, because it's not necessary. You don't have to. There's a lot better ways to do it, and one of them is scanning. Just remember to scan about every few steps, really. You want to make sure that you don't bump this deer, because then he's going to start running and you've got a long day ahead of you if you want to chase that. It's almost better to just find more fresh tracks somewhere, you know, nearby and follow another deer, which is sometimes, if they're spread out, that can be quite a time. So if you mess that up, it can really hurt this method of hunting, okay? Another tip or something to look for while you're tracking is if you see leaps and bounds or a long stride, you're gonna wanna pick up your pace just a little bit, because that deer is probably cruising along pretty good, especially during the rutting season. It's gonna be chasing does. If you see doe prints and buck prints and they look like they're long strides, okay, most likely that buck's gonna be chasing that doe. And so you're gonna have to make up some time. Now, they will wait around in certain areas and kind of chase each other in a certain area. They're not gonna be just straight running like a marathon, okay? So there is a pretty good chance, no, you're not faster than the deer, but there is a possibility that you could sneak up on that deer or catch up to that deer by picking up your pace, and then hopefully they will get to a point where they're kind of gonna rest or browse a little bit, chase around in one spot. And so that's your chance that you can catch up to that deer. Now, if you see that they're a little bit closer together, it probably most likely means that they're browsing. Okay, so you're gonna wanna slow down a little bit, because you don't, like I said earlier, you don't wanna bump these deer. So you can kind of slow down when you see something like that. And that's a good way to gauge the pace at which you need to follow these deer at, right? The final tip I'm gonna give you is to make sure that you're minding your own safety. Okay, pay attention to your own safety. You don't wanna get so far out that you get lost. Like I said, you're gonna be in huge areas. You know, believe it or not, it's pretty easy to get lost if you don't know where you are, if you're in unfamiliar territory. A lot of these places, a lot of these large standing timber tracks, I mean, it all looks the same, right? And sure, you can cover your footprints, but if you're going on a day like I described where it's snowing, they might be covered up 3 or 4 hours later, depending on how much it's snowing, right? So always pack a backpack with necessities. Be prepared to stay out there at night if you should have to. Also, bring a map and a GPS and know where you are. Okay, when I was in ranger school, we would be walking along, the ranger instructor would come up to random people and say, here's a map, show me where you are, right? And you know, we're tired, we're hungry, but you gotta know where you are. It's important. If you don't know where you are, that's a good way to get lost. And if you know where you are and you're following your map or your GPS, not only are you gonna have a better chance of knowing where you are and not getting lost, but you're also gonna know the terrain features that you're gonna be coming up against. And you can judge that. If you're gonna see super steep terrain, you know, deer don't wanna run up hills and down hills, right? So you can kind of judge where they might be going to, or if they're gonna slow down, etc. That maybe you see a giant field up ahead, and it's like a cornfield or an agricultural field, or just, you know, CRP ground, or which is Conservation Reserve Program in Missouri, but just like basically a big field or something, you know, hey, maybe it's getting close to evening, maybe they're gonna go feed in that field, or they're gonna stand by outside in the wood line, wait for the evening to go outside and feed. So maybe I should kind of pay a lot of attention and start to slow down and kind of ease up next to this field edge, because they may be stationed in this field edge getting ready to go feed, or they may have went out into the field to start browsing around, right? And so you're gonna want to pay attention to that type of stuff. So it's great to have a map. It's actually, I mean, I would not go out into a huge tract of woods that you're not familiar with, following deer around, if you don't have a map and a GPS and you know where you are at all times. As far as safety, a way to start a fire, a good warm piece of covering, such as maybe a tarp and a wool blanket or something like that. Make sure you're dressed for it, you know. Make sure you're not gonna get wet, because if you're 5 or 6 miles from a road, your feet get wet, right? That sucks. Trust me, I've walked a long ways with wet feet and it's just not fun, okay? So, there are some tips to help you get out there and you can track a deer. And of course, I'm really sad because it's February. Our deer season's ended last month, and so I won't be chasing any deer in the snow, but I am going to try to be going coyote hunting, and so you can stick around for those videos. Hopefully I can get a successful coyote hunt on tape. And like I said before, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. I got a lot of videos coming out. I'm really concentrating on this channel this year, and writing some stories for Midwest Outdoors. So if you don't subscribe to that and you're in the Midwest and you like hunting, fishing tips, stuff like that, check that out and follow along to this channel. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and thanks for watching. Some snow coming down behind me, and it's just covering up everything really nicely. And it's